Coming up on One Detroit, we'll check in on the race to fill U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow's seat with One Detroit contributors Stephen Henderson, Zoe Clark, and Nolan Finley. Plus, an artificial intelligence project that could improve the way Detroiters get around the city. Also ahead, Detroit Opera's artistic director talks about the theater's spring lineup. And we'll give you some ideas on things you and your family can do over the Easter weekend. It's all coming up next on One Detroit.
From Delta faucets to Behr paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support for this program is provided by the Cynthia and Essa Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Nissan Foundation and viewers like you.
Just ahead on One Detroit, Wayne State University is working on a project using artificial intelligence that will improve mobility for Detroit bus riders. Plus, Detroit Opera encourages visitors to the NFL Draft to check out its cultural and architectural history. And Cecelia, Sharpe, and Dave Wagner of 90.9 WRCJ have suggestions for how to spend the Easter weekend. But first up, the race for the U.S. Senate seat soon to be vacated by Michigan Democrat Debbie Stabenow is heating up. The latest polls show former U.S. Representative Mike Rogers, a Republican endorsed by former President Donald Trump, is in a tight race with the Democratic frontrunner, U.S. Representative Elissa Slotkin. One Detroit contributor Stephen Henderson of American Black Journal, Nolan Finley from the Detroit News, and Zoe Clark of Michigan Public weighed in on the contenders.
So Zoe Clark and Nolan Finley, among the other electoral treats that we have this year in Michigan, we've got a Senate race with an open Senate seat because Debbie Stabenow, who has been in the Senate since 2001, says she's not running again. That's a rarity in and of itself. It is going to be a contested race, obviously, but within the Republican Party, the primary is looking to be contested. I'm going to set it up this way. Republicans have not won a Senate race in Michigan since 1994. That's a long time. Do they have any shot? Do they have any shot here of doing it in a year where they got a lot of other problems on their plate? Nolan, I'll start with you.
Oh, yeah, I think they have a shot. I mean, a lot of this depends what happens with the top of the ticket. I think we saw 4 years ago when John James ran against Gary Peters and lost a narrow race when Trump lost the state. Those races in a presidential year particularly depend on the top of the ticket to pull them through. And so if Trump does well in Michigan, I think he could pull Mike Rogers or Peter Meyer or whomever the nominee is across the finish line. But if the presidential race doesn't go the Republicans' way, I don't think they can win the Senate.
The other thing I'm fascinated to Nolan's point about top of the ticket, like that tends to be what we see. We saw it in 22, right? Not with any open Senate races, but with Governor Gretchen Whitmer, winning by double digits that ended up lifting, along with some changing of redistricting and new maps for the first time in 40 years, Democrats to hold control. But what I'm going to be really interested about, and I would love to hear both of your thoughts about this, if we might see some tickets splitting. We know that Michiganders sometimes vote Republican for one race, Democrats for the other. And because we know right now that top of the ticket aren't the most popular candidates, I think it's fair to say, I'm really curious if you may see some Republicans holding their noses and voting for establishment Republicans, let's say, and voting for Biden. but then saying, you know what, I'm going to vote for a Mike Rogers instead, and just trying to sort of somehow even this out.
I think you might see that independents doing that. I think you'll definitely see independents doing that. I don't see a whole lot of Republicans uh, voting for Joe Biden. It's not like it was 4 years ago. I mean, they know Joe Biden now, and they've seen him. I think the most likely place you'll see disenfranchised Republicans go at the top of the ticket is just to leave it blank.
Right.
So I do think independents may do that. I doubt many Democrats will do that. I don't think any Democrats will do that. And I really don't see Republicans going that way.
So I actually think Republicans are cursed when it comes to the Senate in Michigan. If you think about all the things that have happened, all the opportunities they've had to win just one of those seats in the last 30 years, we've seen this scenario before where you've got a Democrat who's not maybe terribly popular at the top of the ticket. You had George W. Bush at the top of the ticket during a war, and it wouldn't pull somebody across the finish line. There's something about the candidates, I think, that they choose to run in these races that turns people off. And this year, someone like Mike Rogers, who used to be a really respectable member of the delegation in Washington from Michigan, is now, married to Donald Trump in his politics. And I don't see how Republican voters or Democratic voters would separate him from the question of Trump, especially if Trump is on the ballot at the top of the ballot. Someone like Peter Meijer would be a good compromise candidate. That's somebody that you could get independents and maybe even some Democrats to vote for if they don't like Alyssa Slotkin. But he has almost no shot in the primary because the party's such a mess.
No, and I think without Trump this year, I mean, if things trend like they are trending, he doesn't have a shot in either race. I think, all the polls look still at this point fairly good for Donald Trump in Michigan. And, Peter Meijer probably be a better candidate for Democrats, but I don't see Democrats leaving Alyssa Slotkin. So I don't know where you gain votes in that equation. I think if Mike Rogers runs his own race, the Trump support will help him. And I don't know. I mean, people know him. He's had a good reputation. I don't think he's going to lose that many Republican voters. Question is, how many independents can you pick up and which way they lean in this election?
Yeah, I mean, really what's fascinating, right, is this Republican primary. I mean, you were at a baker's dozen. You had Nikki Snyder, who just dropped out of the U.S. Senate race to run for Congress. And so, I mean, really what you're going to see if all of these folks get their names on the ballots, which we've seen as being an issue recently in recent history here in Michigan, this is just going to be a plurality, right, of whoever is going to win. I mean, it would be shocking if one of these candidates within the Republican Party actually wins, 50+1 in this primary. And so what you're going to see is, smaller numbers. And I think it would have been hard for a Mike Rogers and a Peter Meijer and a Sandy Pensler to split all of those votes in the primary, except for this news that I think took a number of folks by surprise, which was this early Donald Trump endorsement of Mike Rogers after Mike Rogers had said some things that were not super kind about the former president. And we know that the former president tends to hold a grudge. I thought that was really interesting and could be what gets him through this primary into the general.
Yeah. I mean, the Trump endorsement, I don't know if that helps or hurts in the primary. It probably helps this time around. I interviewed Mike Rogers when he said he was going to run, and he had a hard time articulating some of the answers to questions about the election in 2020. He wouldn't commit to the fact that Joe Biden had won. He had a hard time articulating what we should think about January 6th. I think these are issues that are going to sink Republican candidates this fall. I'm not sure what role Donald Trump plays in all of that ultimately in the primary, but I do think that when you're talking about a general election, it's going to be really tough to maintain voters' support and confidence when they can't be clear on things that are not debatable and that voters say are not debatable.
I think, Steve, voters are going to go to the polls this time worried about immigration, worried about prices, worried about the drift in this country over the last 4 years and the lack of leadership under Democrats. And
The
some
drift
of the
to the
things,
greatest job growth in the last 20 years.
some of and still low participation in the workforce. I mean, you can tell people all you want that they're doing great, but people, you look at what people are saying, you don't feel like they're doing great.
I don't know. What's
I
your
don't know if it's a
portfolio
winning
look like? Mine's
strategy.
pretty good.
I don't think it's a winning strategy, Steve, to tell voters, hey, you're not as bad off as you think you are. I don't know that that's ever worked. And that seems to be the Democratic strategy. I mean, the issue that voters care about, I think Mike Rogers or Peter Meyer or even Sandy Pensler are going to speak very powerfully too. I don't think they're going to be looking back. I mean, it may surprise you. It surprises me. It surprises most people. I thought Donald Trump was done in 2021, but he's not. And if you look at the poll and you look at his support, people have, rightly or wrongly, forgiven him his sins. A lot of people have, and I think he's as competitive as this election as he's ever been.
Yeah, we'll see.
Artificial intelligence continues to evolve, and here in Michigan, the technology could help transform public transit. Wayne State University is working on an AI tool to improve the way Detroiters get around the city by making the bus system more reliable and efficient. As part of One Detroit's Future of Work series, I spoke with the team behind the AI for Mobility project to find out how it would operate. Over the last few years, conversations around artificial intelligence, or AI, have grown. From applications like ChatGPT writing just about anything you can think of, to the recently showcased Sora that generates video from text, the uses for AI seem to grow daily, and that includes here in Michigan. In Detroit, at the Wayne State Computer Science Building, I spoke with Professor of Computer Science Dr. Dongxiao Zhu, whose goal is to use AI for social good.
Can you explain in, I guess, the simplest terms what artificial intelligence is? What are we talking about?
Yeah, artificial intelligence is a sub-discipline of computer science. So it's basically just help people, human being, how to use a computer to promote the productivity. Artificial intelligence is artificial, not real. Just to mimic some of the human, actions like decision making. But second is general intelligence, just hopefully behave completely like a human.
What are some of the AI applications that people have been using but may not realize it is indeed artificial intelligence?
For example, you can use the AI, to schedule the meeting for you. The companies can use the conversation agent to do the entry-level customer service in the medical field, right? So the AI can help to diagnosis and also prognosis. Based on the images, the AI can automatically automate the process to predict or whether there's a certain condition exists.
Today, we hear mostly about the second generation of AI, differentiated by its ability to think past simple yes or no decisions and complete tasks like summarizing entire books, generating creative works like images and video, or administrative paperwork based on what the user asks, which for today's workforce can be both inspiring and frightening.
Instead of be afraid of AI to take a job from the people, we should take it more positively. We should start thinking about how to use AI to help us, to promote the productivity and improving the, outcomes.
In response to a Civic Innovation Challenge award by the National Science Foundation and Department of Energy, Dr. Zhu and his team are developing an AI tool to improve public transit operations and options for Detroiters. The efficiency and accessibility of public transit, sometimes referred to as mobility, plays a critical role in moving people around Detroit.
So in this case, mobility is one of the primary interests from public, right? So how to move freely and safely, right? Especially for the for the people with disabilities.
The AI tool would enable the Detroit Public Transit Service to accommodate riders' needs by adjusting bus routes more. It would also improve the availability of on-demand rides known as microtransit and paratransit rides for people with disabilities more effectively. The AI tool would use foot traffic data to see where most people need and use public transit, combined with information through an app to make sure more buses and rides are available and on time. Rafi Ibn Sultan on Dr. Zhu's team shows us how the AI tool would also improve riders' ability to navigate what's called the last mile, which is the distance a rider has to travel to their destination after they've been dropped off, by creating a detailed map of sidewalks using aerial images from sources like Google.
What if people there to have like disabilities? So they need like a pedestrian networks, like where the sidewalks are, where the crosswalks are, how I can cross the street.
When we contacted the Detroit Department of Transportation, they said it's too early to comment on potential AI solutions to current transit needs. While the current app does show where buses are and gives estimated arrivals, it doesn't help them run on time or make other transit options more readily available.
So the AI play a role here to determine, when and where to deploy these resources to move the people to where they want to go.
AI technology is still an emerging field with new developments and potential applications cropping up daily.
Well, obviously it's exciting. Like we're in the front seat of a car that is that car which is going to the future, right? So we're actually working on something that is being developed like every day. If you go in the research committee, you'll see like 10 or 15 papers per day, because everybody's working on it.
AI-enhanced public transit would be a game changer that has the potential to push Detroit further into the future. AI for mobility is just one area of Dr. Zhu's research, and it's still in the prototype stage. But overall, he's cautiously optimistic about the future.
My optimistic estimate is next 5 years we can fully realize the AGI, artificial general intelligence. So that means AI can behave exactly like a human being in terms of many things, not anything, many things.
The spring season gets underway next month at Detroit Opera with a production of Breaking the Waves by composer Missy Mazzoli. Then, in May, The Cunning Little Vixen, directed by Detroit Opera's artistic director Yuval Sharon, takes the stage. One Detroit's Sarah Zintarski sat down with Sharon to talk about the upcoming shows and what makes Detroit Opera truly Detroit.
How do you make Detroit Opera accessible to the community here in Detroit and Metro Detroit?
I think we're trying to do a number of different things. First of all, just a few years ago, we changed the name to Detroit Opera to really make sure everyone realizes how much pride we have being right here in the heart of downtown Detroit. And I hope that signals to our public that we're all about Detroit and that we're all about the people that live in the Metro Detroit area. And that the operas that happen here, really one of my goals is to think, can we create productions here that you cannot really experience quite the same way anywhere else? And so that's involved some world premiere productions, some new productions, and of course productions in various different venues around Detroit that I think really speak to a certain kind of character of what Detroit's about.
What does the spring and summer look like for Detroit Opera?
We have two other pieces on our main stage at the Detroit Opera House, both of which I'm really excited about. One is, and they're both, what I'm really excited about both of them is that they are firsts, for Detroit Opera to be doing these pieces. One of them is the first time we've ever done an opera on the main stage written by a woman named Missy Mazzoli, who is known as kind of the Mozart of her generation, is what New York Magazine, I believe, called her, with good reason. She is an incredible composer, beautiful work that she's written called Breaking the Waves, which is based on the Lars von Trier film, and is actually an incredibly engaging and powerful story. Pretty dark, it's not for the faint of heart, but it is an absolutely ravishing musical score that I think anyone that comes is going to be completely captivated by. So I'm really looking forward to that in April. And I'm going to be directing a piece called The Cunning Little Vixen in May, which after a piece that is so brooding and dark, like Breaking the Waves, it's really nice to end the season with a comedy, and one that is really good, I think, for the whole family. It's a 90-minute piece called The Cunning Little Vixen. It is by the Czech composer Leos Janáček, and it's based on a comic strip that he read in the newspaper. And so for our production, we're taking that comic strip aspect really seriously. There are screens that are up where the singers are basically going to open portals in the screen, stick their head through the screen, and their bodies will be animated as the animals. And we'll see the animals running all over the screen, and the singers have to close these portals and kind of pop up at exactly the right spot to light up with their bodies. But something really playful, I think really, really joyful. Also some of the most beautiful music, I think, that's been written for opera. And the first time that we've ever performed either this opera or the composer. And so for me, sometimes people think opera is something that people think, I know everything about opera, it's Puccini, it's Verdi, it's etc. But there is so much more to explore always with opera. There's so many new directions that it's going and have gone, you know, that the opera has gone. That I am so excited to be exploring with the Detroit audiences.
Yeah, I love how you're taking these operas and making it like almost modern. We were here for Madame Butterfly. And
Right,
how you took
right.
that opera and created this virtual reality space. It was incredible, really blew you away. But then you still had the music that was just so compelling and beautiful as always.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
then Ina DeMar was.
Oh, I loved Ina DeMar. The Fountain of Tears was really one of my favorites, I think, during my time here. I mean, really, it's something that, in the case of Madame Butterfly, I do hope audiences realize it's like, the music stays the same, but when the visual changes, you plug into this music in a totally different way. I think for people that didn't know Madame Butterfly, maybe they went home to study it or to listen to it on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, however they like to listen to music. It hopefully piqued their interest in what was originally supposed to happen versus why did the director make these choices to take us into a virtual reality space, and what kind of illumination does that bring to a piece. And so I've been really excited that we could offer that for every single piece that we do.
So April 25th through 27th, the NFL draft is coming
Yes,
here.
of
Your
course.
next door neighbor, Ford Field.
That's
so
right,
what is
that's
the
right.
Detroit Opera? Do you have anything going on those dates?
For people interested in architectural history, you know, how that relates to culture, we definitely do tours of the building, and it's really well worth the tour because the building itself is over 100 years old and has gone through so many different lives, and we have great docents that can tell so many fantastic stories about the life of this theater, the Detroit Opera House. And I think that that's something that I hope we can continue doing, which is give people one reason to keep exploring. And I hope that as they come here, they'll discover their own reasons to come back, not just the opera, but everything else that Detroit, I think, has to offer.
Easter weekend is here, and you'll find plenty of holiday-themed activities throughout Metro Detroit. Plus, March Madness is taking over the city. Cecelia, Sharpe, and Dave Wagner of 90.9 WRCJ have a rundown of events to check out in today's One Detroit Weekend.
Hey Dave, you know I love being able to sit here with you and talk about the incredible events that the city has in store for us. So what are you going to start us off with, Dave?
Oh, I've got some great stuff. Starting Friday, the musical Children of Eden takes the main stage at the Baldwin Theater. It's put on by Stagecrafters, and the production takes on the relationships of parents with their children, with the ultimate message being the hardest part of love is letting go.
Through March 31st is the always anticipated Ann Arbor Film Festival. The event screens more than 180 films from over 20 countries in 40 different categories. Be sure to check out this staple. That's the oldest avant-garde and experimental film festival in North America.
Oh yeah, that's been around since what, 1963?
About as long as you've been around, right, Dave?
That's funny.
Well, you know I love you, Dave. And on Saturday, get into the spring holiday spirit with Easter Jazz 24 with Incognito and Norman Brown at the Fisher Theater.
Some more Easter fun is taking place at the Leslie Science and Nature Center with the Spring Egg Extravaganza Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. Kids can do a craft, take part in a scavenger egg hunt, and see just which animals in nature lay those eggs in the Critter House.
Let's keep the spring theme going with Spring into Science running through March 30th. The hands-on activities include beehive keeping, exploring creepy invasive crawlies in the Great Lakes, checking out spring wildflowers, and much more.
Opening your eyes to the magic of nature in the springtime really is a great way to spend the weekend, Cecelia. And there's always so much more happening in and around Detroit, so here's a few more events.
That'll do it for this week's One Detroit. Thanks for watching. Head to the One Detroit website for all the stories we're working on. Follow us on social media and sign up for our weekly newsletter.
From Delta faucets to Behr paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support for this program is provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Nissan Foundation and viewers like you.